Thank you, gentlemen. I very much appreciate your testimony, but I would say that the one instrument that would be the most helpful to this committee in understanding why this tax gap has not been addressed is a mirror. This gigantic tax gap did not happen by accident. It is the direct result of the failures and the indifference of this committee over the last years, and sometimes its deliberate attempt to facilitate tax dodging. We've gone through a period of time when the IRS has been held up as a failure, as a harm to the American economy, and the committee and its allies throughout this House have done their best to assure that the IRS lack the resources to be a success. The committee learned of the Panama Papers not through any of its work, but through excellent investigative journalism, and despite pleas that it respond and conduct its own investigation, it did absolutely nothing. The committee learned and had requests for action following the Paradise Papers, other excellent investigative reporting about international tax dodging. It did absolutely nothing. And in addition to the failure to investigate and fulfill its responsibilities, it has been told over and over again, not that anything you said this morning, Mr. George, is really a surprise, that if we'd invest $1 in enforcement, we get about $3 back for the Treasury. Not having to raise taxes on other people, but simply seeing that those who owe taxes pay their fair share. But the committee largely ignored that testimony, and only this year in the Budget Committee, there were Republican efforts to undermine attempts to increase IRS enforcement to get the revenue that some people are dodging. Of course, the tax gap is not helped when the most powerful person in the country and in the world tells Americans it is smart, to use his word, to not pay taxes. Indeed, only this week, President Trump declared, after we learned that he was the biggest loser in America for many years when it came to what he showed on his tax returns, almost twice some years than the next largest loser, when his response was in a tweet this week, and I quote, "You always wanted to show losses for tax purposes. Almost all real estate developers did. And often to negotiate with banks, it was sport." It was sport. What words for the President of the United States when we want public confidence in our tax system to declare it sport to underreport, to dodge your taxes. Of course, this comes after a special reward that he and other real estate developers like this got through the good graces of this committee. Well, that may be a little bit of an overstatement. Actually, this committee didn't include a special provision for real estate promoters, nor did the Senate, nor did the House, until the conference committee. And after the conference committee, a special Trump tax provision was added, just as was the special provision to lower the tax rate for the most wealthy people in the country. I want to ask Mr. Chairman to include in the record the new report from ProPublica. The IRS tried to take on the ultra-wealthy, and it didn't go well.
Hearing no objection, such will be the order.
Mr. George, in 2009, the IRS created a unit called the Global High Wealth Group to audit taxpayers worth over $10 million. The current IRS commissioner, Mr. Rettig, Mr. Trump's appointee, was at that time with a well-heeled law firm. He referred to the work of this group as audits from hell. Is it true, sir, that at this point the IRS has still not established the Global High Wealth Division as a standalone entity, and that it has been, quote, de-emphasized organizationally?
It is true, sir, that they have not yet established that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So after all this time, something could have been done, but we have an IRS commissioner in place who doesn't really believe in this. And Mr. Wood, you've described the machinations that these international corporations go through to avoid paying their fair share of our national security. As you know, I have legislation that simply says you don't have an incentive to go abroad because you pay the same tax rate there as you do here. It's part of the attempt to prevent the outsourcing of American jobs and profits. If that were the law, would that reduce the incentive for these transfer pricing games?
It would certainly reduce the incentive to do so. I would say that
Thank you.
I think it's an open question as to whether the 2017 Act might also have reduced the incentive by currently taxing some offshore profits and also reducing the profits, reducing the rate on the FDII income.
And I certainly-
time will tell, but certainly
Yep.
eliminating deferral and taxing it at the full rate would certainly go a long way toward doing
I
that.
agree with you on that, save the 3 loopholes that were created by the same act. Thank you.
Mr.